All right. Welcome in. Welcome in. I'm glad to have you guys. Welcome into the space because we definitely are here for a purpose. And the purpose is for us to create a oneness, be informed, be interactive with self, and practice, and go in on yourself. Meditation, do your meditations, go in meditation. If you're not in certain spaces and growing, get used to meditation. I know I was talked to a younger gentleman today about how he needs meditation. I will share some stuff about meditation in the future, but I'm on this roll and I got to keep going with this roll. I feel it, I feel it, I feel it. And I was looking at most of my videos recently, haven't been so much the self-development, but it's been more the just telling you what's going on in the matrix, especially from the place of as you see with the exchange from 120, which we're looking at less than 30 days, and we've had so much happen from fires to on and on and on. We've seen all that's happened and it expired and went through this transpiring through this and even before. I went out today, got some gas, and recognized gases went up 40 cents again. And so, us as beings, we remember when it was $5 and $6, especially here in California, pushing those numbers. And when it got down to 387 or 389, we thought it was great, but the reality, it was way cheaper than that then, and we celebrate that which shouldn't be celebrated. We forgot because we're looking at what happened lately while the game was being ran on us, and you think you got a benefit. It's not a benefit. It's not a benefit. But anyways, so we got all this stuff happening. We got like I said, the change, and I've been straight here and straightforward telling you that both sides are the heads or tails of the same quarter, if I may say so myself, that both sides are the same quarter. And then of course you got a little introduction into Miss Whitney Webb, who is a straight shooter and telling you everything that's going on in these spaces of finances and technology that many of us don't have the understanding to deep dive into and may not be interested. But when you start looking at what the change is coming and what's the change been coming, we look at our last generations of children and time, especially as older folks. We remember when we used to drink out the water hose. Us as children played outside all day. We didn't try to stay in and lay around and eat potato chips and play games. So we know that our children's generation did that. Now, if you have grandchildren or your children's children, you realize this has been anteed up. It's not like the old days. The things have changed. And it's really connected to the technology. And more I'm looking at the technology and even what's happening now when you look at what's happening when you go and filtering through things that's even happening now in the government. And these 19-year-olds were hired by Elon Musk to go through things which are highly securitized things. And I'll let her talk about it. And 19 years old, and are they on meth because they're staying up all day? Or are they on a bunch of coffee or a bunch of soda, hyped up on Mountain Dew, extra caffeine, and a bunch of sugar? What's going on? Because you're putting these things in the hands of different things. But I'm gonna let her go. I'm gonna share some. I'm gonna share some stuff right now. We're gonna go on this. We're gonna call this a word that. Before I press the share button, Jordan Maxwell, a few years ago, I watched a video of him and he mentioned this word, technocrats. He said, get ready for the technocrats. And of course, Jordan Maxwell's been passed away for a couple of years now, but he said, get ready for the technocrats. And I'm telling you, the technocrats are here, have been here, but it's anteed up with this change. Now what's going on with combing through everything, using this aspect of combing through everything, getting rid of things, signing all these declarations or all these things just quickly, and we don't know what's being signed, that if it benefits us or not. We're given propaganda that this does, and we may agree with one thing, but I know when you totally go drastic change, you have a lot of people who have no conscience and change is hard for them and they don't understand. And many of us don't understand details. I'm going to share a few videos from her. She understands details and gets down to the nitty gritty. So I got to share it with you. You guys got to look at this. I may have to put my trusty glasses on again before we go into this video. Let's do a little Wikipedia. So I mentioned the word, let's go into it, that I heard from Mr. Maxwell a few years ago called technocrats. So here it is. It's going to be interesting, even what you're going to find out here. And what I found out here on Wikipedia is definitely in other places. So let's start here. Technocracy is a form of government in which the decision makers are selected based on their expertise in the given area, responsibility, particularly with regard to scientific or technical knowledge. Technocracy follows largely in the tradition of metrocratic theories and assumes all full. And let's see what metrocracy is. It's the notion of political system which economic goods or political powers are vested in individual people based on ability and talent rather than wealth or social class advance. And such system is based on performance measured through, on and on and on, measured through demonstration. It's, definitely we hear this and we know that that's one of the things they pushed on getting rid of DEI, which makes sense to me because it was a program being run from the other side, being ran for 65 years, and you've seen the fruit of it, and it was usually ran by the left. And we see the fruit of it in these major democratic cities. The fruit of it is we see all these major cities, in these big cities, in these democratic states are pretty much, just to be honest, I live in them, I've seen them in my state, they're all shitholes now. Not saying the other side's superior, just telling you the damage has been done. I'm going to tell you, there's not a right and a left that are the right and the left, and one's right and one's wrong. These are aspects that are the same team running the same game on the people. And if you're picking the sides left or right, you're still in the volleyball game. You're still playing the game. You're still on the court, on the tennis court or the courthouse amongst judges. And notice that even in tennis, who sits up in the high place that watches the ball and makes the sets, they're called judges. I'm telling you, it's a game. Even these games are games within the games, and the language is there. But anyways, well, let me go back there. We did mention what it was like. Theories and assessments assumes full state control over political issues, economic issues. The system especially contrasts with representative democracy. The notion is elected representatives should be primary decision makers, though it is necessary to eliminating elected by decision makers selected based on specialized knowledge, performance rather than political affiliations, parliamentary skills, or popularity. The term technocracy was initially used to signify the application of a scientific method to solving social problems. The technocracy is an entire government running as a technical engineering problem, hypothetical. And you can go on and on. We can go on and on with this, and you can read it farther of what this is telling you. This is telling you we're in the technology age. After you read farther, you find out this just didn't happen. This was planned since 1930s. You can look it up and just Google it, and it will tell you that it was started in the 1930s. I did that earlier. This is hence why the change is so this. If you just be honest and take a look what's happening in your world, whether you're an older person or a younger person, because some of the younger people have not ever experienced life without technology, which many of us older people did. Right, we played outside all day. We weren't overweight. We weren't doing those things. We were moving and grooving and exercising and learning skills with strengths, getting owies and not whining about it, because we became tougher individuals. And we see these aspects are not even used anymore in children playing outside. They don't play outside anymore. They play on technology. I'm going to let her go in because I have a lot of thoughts about this. So I'm going to let her add what she needs to add. Let me just look at something else I might want to read. The term technomancy is initially application, like I said. I'm trying to see the year, if the year pops up. The term Oh, actually, the term technocracy derived from the Greek word meaning skill, kratos meaning power, and governance. A Californian engineer usually credited with inventing the word in 1919, folks. This is 106 years ago. 105 to 106 years ago. They do not plan off the whim. They didn't make the plans in the 1990s were going to be technology. This plan was over 100 years ago. And I'm telling you, it's not what you think it is. And I already know, if you don't know, places like China and them have a bunch of cameras around. This comes with surveillance in your rights. And they could say something. This goes very deep, and we're going to get in and let Miss Whitney break this down. She's very skilled and she knows what she's talking about. The name of this video is "The Elites Are Planning to Shock the World." Whitney Webb on BlackRock, which I believe in the last video I talked about. I've known about BlackRock for a long time. When you were getting the jibby jabby jooby jooby, they definitely had their hands in multiple cookie jars. This is democracy or technomocracy with a bit not of just that, but also a bit when government becomes so big that it's running your country. That's fascism. I don't know if you guys know, but that's really what fascism is. So this is the other one you heard somebody talk and mention. What you're going to hear her talk today and break some stuff down. It's under 20 minutes.
Global policy push for digital IDs as the new form of government-issued identification credentials. And they're essentially all based on your biometric data, which can be your fingerprints, your face, the iris of your eyeball. And the idea is essentially to collect all of that data and have it housed or have it tied directly to your digital ID. So your physical ID will be mapped to the digital ID.
This future that Whitney Webb will be describing in today's video will probably sound scary to a lot of you watching, but it's the reality of what we are to expect with this new AI digital asset future that BlackRock and many other elite organizations are trying to push on all of you. And I've been doing some research on the World Economic Forum and looking through a number of their different articles, and what I've found is most likely going to shock a lot of you guys. They're talking a lot about what Whitney Webb is mentioning in today's video. And when we're talking about digital ID and programmability, well, this is a huge topic in the cybersecurity section for World Economic Forum. You see, generally speaking, the World Economic Forum, or WEF, is actually working with the likes of the CIA, the FBI, and many other organizations for security reasons, when in reality their plans are a lot more sinister. And Whitney Webb is going to be talking about this in today's video, which is absolutely crucial for all of you to educate yourself on, for it's going to drastically change the future for virtually everybody across the globe today. So later we will be diving a little bit deeper into the World Economic Forum and how they are manipulating a lot of you, but first, let's hear what Whitney Webb has to say.
Digital IDs are not really a separate project from CBDCs and this new digital financial system. And UN documentation and also documentation from the Bank of International Settlements, they very overtly state that CBDCs and digital IDs are meant to go together, and without digital IDs, the CBDC digital finance system cannot exist. One of the reasons it can't exist without that is because of the KYC functionality built into this digital financial system. They have the know your customer protocols. They have to know who you are. And so they want to have your wallet tied to a digital ID and have that digital ID be mapped to your physical ID through the biometric data collection. So there's different efforts to make digital IDs either as NFTs, non-fungible tokens. There's also the efforts of Sam Altman of OpenAI and his WorldCoin project, whereby you scan your iris, you give them the biometric credentials of your eyeball, they give you a unique identifier, a digital ID, and it's inherently tied to a digital wallet. That is the same model the UN is using. They've already implemented it for refugees getting food assistance from the World Food Program. It's called Building Blocks. It's on blockchain. It involves refugees scanning their irises, and in order to buy food or receive their rations, they have to checkout of a grocery store style place in the refugee camp, and they check out biometrically with an eyeball scan, and then the amount of food they have, the monetary value of that is subtracted from their digital wallet connected to their digital ID and their iris. It doesn't matter what country you're in or whether you're part of BRICS or part of the collective West. This is being rolled out across the board.
So what entities are pushing this interoperability?
One of the main reasons for this coordinated global push to develop digital IDs is because it's deemed essential to the entire Sustainable Development Agenda, which is the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, also known as Agenda 2030. And the specific part dealing with digital IDs is within SDG 16, which is about building peaceful and inclusive societies. One of the indicators of SDG 16, 16.9, calls for legal identification for everyone in the world from the time they're born, essentially. The leading alliance that was launched under the auspices of the UN to accomplish that is known as ID 2020 and has since been folded into what is called the Digital Impact Alliance, which essentially has the same funders and founders as ID 2020. So ID 2020, the UN and other stakeholders in this particular sphere often argue that the reason this is necessary is because of what they call the identity gap. And the identity gap is the claim that the lack of digital ID is preventing people, mainly the world's poor, from accessing essential services, whether it's banking, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare. They claim the only way for these people to be able to access these services is to onboard them to these identity schemes.
And so
That's why.
Wow. I know we're going to have a commercial I'm going to skip. You talk about hocus pocus in running game. So you're going to let the poor people be the scapegoat, man. These folks are something else, man. Let's go. So we can
Your
get
nerves
this done.
fail and your feet start to burn. Did you know that neuropathy is a completely reversible condition? You may not realize it, but the natural...
I'm going to admit, initially upon hearing this from Whitney Webb, I was a little bit skeptical about what she was saying. But upon researching the World Economic Forum and going through all of their articles, I found that she was 100% correct. And what I'm about to show you is going to shock you. But first, I must let you know that the BlackRock CEO, the FBI, the CIA, all these large technology companies that are going to be responsible for this digital ID system are in collaboration with the World Economic Forum. They're either direct members of the forum, or they are literally collaborating with them on these initiatives. Now, one particular initiative that caught my eye and that they talk about very much so on the WEF is the fourth industrial revolution. And more specifically, they posted an article called Accelerating Digital Inclusion for...
If you watch my video on Albert Pike, Morals and Dogma, in their plans, this fourth revolution is mentioned along with the world wars, and it aligns them all the way from the Russian Revolution to the Third World War, and in between, from even the religions being casted down but being held up just enough to get what they need over in this process, which I had mentioned on his. But this makes total sense. The revolution is you will not hold coin no more. You are going to go into Bitcoin and these digital coins and this digital money and digital surveillance and digital ID. Walk in the store. This stuff's already happening in some of the Asian countries. I know China, they have so much cameras on you. I just wonder how there's crime at all, and there still is. And then they'll walk in and get their eyes and that. Many of us here in the West have been aware of this through the freedoms we have had. Remember, you do have freedoms. You can go make a business right now and be successful. You still have that much freedom. You can go create your own business right now, and it can crush. If you put your energy, and you can be an entrepreneur and crush a business right now, or go into some kind of business of sales and crush it. There is absolutely some freedoms, but this will deteriorate them, and that's their plan. This is them putting in. That's why you have Elohim connected in this, and now going through Doge and pressing. I'm gonna let this young lady talk.
1 billion people by 2025. Now, of course, this is put out in a way that seems inclusive, that seems positive, but they actually have much more sinister plans that you guys need to be aware about. You see, they start the article by talking about, how they've improved people's lives and how today there's 2.6 billion people who do not use the internet. But then they go on to say the Alliance is mobilizing cross-sector action to provide affordable and accessible digital solutions across health, education, and financial services.
The technocrats.
Now, what are all of these health, financial, and educational services? Well, a large part of this is exactly what Whitney Webb is describing, where they are scanning the irises and putting out these blockchain technologies for these impoverished nations. And essentially what they are doing is they are testing this system and modifying and making the system better on this control group. They're basically doing an experiment to ensure that they can push this system forward so that they can start controlling you or me down the road. And if you think that this is impossible to happen in a developed nation like the United States of America, I just tell you guys to go look at what's currently happening in China.
Boom.
Right now, Chinese cameras are able to use AI softwares to scan people's faces if you were, say, jaywalking the street, and then they automatically affect your social credit score and make it so you can't enter into certain grocery stores. This is something that's already happening in other developed nations. That is the second largest economy in the world. So if you think that it's not possible for this to happen in the United States of America, well, you're most definitely wrong. And the way for us to not allow this to happen is really crucial. But first, we need to understand the system more, because Whitney Webb does give some more vital information on what their plans are.
So what they mean by essential services is they say without these forms of recognized identity, people in the world, mainly the world's poor, are unable to access bank accounts, unable to access healthcare, unable to access government services, a variety of things, because they don't have ID or they don't have bank accounts, things of that nature. So in order to allow everyone to access all of these things and include them, hence the frequent word of inclusion in all these documents.
That's funny, because that's what we dealt with here. They're just prepping them, and the program ones will fall into this of, it's about the left versus the right. It's not. It's about bringing this technocrats, because this is technocrats, what I shared with you, definitions, being around and starting in 1919, 125 years, we're 1919, so 106 years ago to 105 years ago, that this plan was kicked off. It goes into their book of Revelations and the technology and the she'll explain it.
Digital ID is the necessary way to bridge this identity gap.
Do you find those arguments credible, or?
One of the main words they use to market this stuff is equity and inclusion. The idea that we need to include everybody in these new systems. But if you don't participate in digital ID, you won't have a legally recognized identity, you won't have rights, you won't be able to access services without it. So it's being framed as promoting inclusion, but the system itself is inherently exclusionary and has been used
Come on, girl. Bring it down.
To track and surveil people, to link people to, essentially all their activities, what they say online in some of the countries that have rolled this out, and has been used to facilitate human rights abuses. So it's not exactly as inclusive as they like to claim. It's inclusive in the sense that we want everyone equally included in our new system that we're creating, our new control system, fundamentally. The UN likes to talk about human rights and how this is ultimately a human rights project and things like that, or how it's empowering human rights. But in other documents of the UN, they refer to human rights not as inalienable rights, which is what most people think of when they hear the term human rights. In some of these UN documents, they refer to human rights explicitly as policy tools, or tools that can be used to basically implement, specific things and mechanisms that ultimately give, greater control over really any aspect of your life that they may want to influence. These guys also admit that the digital ID and CBDC is meant to be the same thing, and there's some very illuminating policy documents in this regard. So for example, there's this one UN document called the People's Money, they call it, and it essentially talks about creating a citizen-centric, SDG-aligned digital financial system, which is obviously the system that
there's one single video that's responsible for leading over 2,000 Christian men to permanently quitting the P word. And
that we've been talking about. And what they say in there is essentially once your savings and your money is onboarded onto the system, they feel that they reserve the right to access and use your funds to develop and implement the Sustainable Development Goals.
And so I found this document after going through the United Nations website. It is indeed called The People's Money, and this is publicly available for all of you guys to look at yourself. But I found a few things in this document extremely interesting. There's roughly 60 pages. The introduction alone is about 5 pages, but they make a lot of interesting statements, right? And this is from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund.
I have not seen this all
people
yet.
are super connected. I mean, we have people from every single 3-letter agency that exists making quotes and talking about this whole idea of the people's money. Now, one thing that I found really interesting throughout this document is the theme of urgency. They say there is an urgent need to return the financial services industry to what it's supposed to be, an industry that serves people. But what they don't seem to like to talk about is how this new system actually gives them a lot more control. It is a classic manipulation tactic. They're saying, this is for you guys. This is in your best interest. You guys need to want this. This is going to make sure that you guys are not going to be taken advantage of. Meanwhile, we are giving all of the power to these very few individuals who have been abusing us for all of this time. I mean, do we really trust BlackRock? They are a member who is frequently attending these meetings. Do we think that BlackRock is going to solve our problems? Do we want to give them
BlackRock's
more power
part of the
over
problem.
what we're doing? But their messaging across this is, oh, this is a historic opportunity combined with unprecedented crises that we're going to solve. And it's just so concerning that they're releasing these documents and talking about this, and people are just shaking their head and saying, yeah, this sounds like a fantastic thing. So Whitney Webb is 100% correct. And I urge you guys to take out and read this document yourself. I will provide a link to this, but first, there's much more important information that Whitney Webb does talk about here. We're really just getting started.
Feel that they reserve the right to access and use your funds to develop and implement the Sustainable Development Goals or build the infrastructure necessary for it. So they essentially think that your money is their money. When COVID was happening, there was this push for vaccine passports, and a lot of the people that were pushing or creating the vaccine passports were part of this either ID 2020 or they were part of related entities pushing for digital ID. And essentially what happened with the vaccine passport was to link your identity to your travel, to the freedom of movement. And if you didn't have one, you were excluded from entering certain places. So that, again, highlights the idea of how these digital IDs are inherently exclusionary, because if you don't have one, then you're excluded from, moving where other people that have those privileges. And if you don't abide by these various stipulations, you're excluded from participating in those things. And if you look at how the UN sponsored groups like ID 2020 are constructing this, they're trying to hide behind a facade of decentralization and construct digital identity in a way that they call as vendor agnostic, meaning that any private company in theory could develop a digital ID system that people could use. So you'll have a variety of companies or government agencies issuing digital ID, and it will not look like a centralized digital ID, but it will be. Based on what's been developed so far by these entities, it seems like that database is meant to be housed at the World Bank, and it's called ID4D, and is sort of cloaked in the same rhetoric that ID 2020, cloaks their own project, claiming it's decentralized and all of this, but it's a centralized global data set where all these different digital ID systems can export their data to. The World Bank's interesting in the sense that, the World Bank, the IMF, they essentially use a debt slavery model to enforce policy objectives on national governments. And the World Bank has openly said that debt is a critical form of financing for the Sustainable Development Goals. So basically saddle a country in debt, and instead of having it enact austerity policies and things like that, it's to get them to enact digital ID. It's to get them to enact, financial inclusion, as they call it, with the CBDCs and their public-private sector equivalents, things of that nature. So that's how they force nation states to act as these enabling environments for these policies. A lot of it is through debt slavery, essentially.
And then governments are sort of just voluntarily following all that.
the UN
Plan.
very openly views the role of national governments only as enabling environments for these policies. So the national governments aren't meant to develop these policies themselves. They're meant to enforce these policies developed by the.
So that's why when you look at all what was happening, we were told that make America great again, and all these buzzwords, Christian or nation nationalism, right? Nation nationalism. Your nation's a national. That's what that's your country. That's where you're from. They're just going to be doing the world. This is really how the process of one world government is going to work. Through the techno, now you can monitor everybody, and then you have these digital IDs, digital system. You won't have a choice. They're trying to push, and that's why I'm telling you guys, go in, wake up. It's time to push yourself to the highest level you can. Do the work and be aware that things that may come on you, you never expect to come on you. Remember, I told you on a video recently, that's why the Bible's a script. It's their script. It's these Abrahamic faiths are all a script. Scriptures. It's not prophecy, it's scriptures. This is a script. The whole world's a stage, and look at the leaders. Our president right here is look what he is. He was in the WWE Hall of Fame. He had a show where his main thing was "You're fired." That's acting. Actors act. I was being honest. That's why I had to share, because I've been leading you through my past videos of the language, where it came from when we were looking at government, blue bloods, all roads lead to where, and even the blue blood systems were this process of this is coming through them. That it just always has been. It just was kept on a low deception way. Now things are in front of your face, and what we see happening with the changeover. And again, not saying the Democrats did their job. They ran you into the arms of the other side with it was so raunchy and stupid, as I've said before, and no common sense. When you have actors being presidents, and then they can't rub two thoughts together, vice president, and you got a guy don't remember if he ate an ice cream cone or what his last name is, and falling down everywhere. That's acting. To run us there because they feel we're sheeple and don't know, but I'm going to let this young lady keep going.
The UN
She's cooking.
And their stakeholder partners, groups like the World Economic Forum, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and then enforce those policies on the public. So a lot of people view the UN sort of as a meeting of the different public sectors and governments of the world, but even the UN leadership have admitted that since at least in the 1990s, if not earlier, there was what Kofi Annan, the former UN Secretary General, called a quiet revolution at the UN, where the business of the UN became the businesses of the world, and there was this move away from the public sector to having it emphasize public-private partnership, which is why you have the premier promoter globally of public-private partnerships, the World Economic Forum, being one of the main strategic partners currently of the United Nations. And this isn't free market capitalism, it's crony capitalism, it's cartelism, because these are, fundamentally corrupt players that don't play by the rules. They manipulate the free market to advance themselves and generate more money and become more powerful. And so really this is, a merging of the public and the private sector, but it's the private ones in control, and they operate as a cartel, not as free market capitalists.
Tell the truth, girl.
And that's essentially where we are right now. And this was essentially admitted before Congress by a very prominent figure at the time named Samuel Pisar, who is probably best known now as being the stepfather of current Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. And when he testified before Congress, he talked about the rise of what he called the trans-ideological corporation, where essentially Western capitalists, or a group of them, had decided to cooperate and do business rather with the people that ran state-owned enterprises in the communist bloc, and together build a network of corporations essentially that would become so powerful that they would make the nation state irrelevant. And this is essentially the model we have today.
And when I hear that, this is what really last year or so really got me thinking about this. Was I remember how demonized communist was with Russia. nothing was good about them. And then I'm looking at China and I'm like, they have their own businesses. They're making money, and the UN opened trade with them when it was the thing was you don't trade, you don't have this connection with communist countries. I mean, this is what happened in the past. And I'm like, how come the Chinese communism is not like the Russian communism in the propaganda we were fed, right? We were fed. And then I started doing my homework, and this is what she's talking about. It's nothing is like what it seems on this level, the 3D level. There's games going on. All the distractions and propaganda of them doing this, and you see 2 people or 3 people always involved in another one with the left and right, and they're going back and forth with the blue-haired people running around looking crazy as hell. Don't know if they're a girl or boy, or if they're all this stuff is to take your eye off the prize, your freedom, and they're putting you under a system. This is all, I'm telling you, this is all Book of Revelation stuff. Their script.
These policies would include like the CBDCs, the SDGs, and the digital IDs? Or?
Yeah, so a lot of these policies are folded into the UN Sustainable Development Agenda or the Digital ID Agenda, and there's different think tanks and different entities that push for these things, but one of the overarching ways this is being forced on the national governments is the Sustainable Development Agenda, the SDGs, which essentially every country on the world has signed on to implement, and even countries that are supposedly against the West, for example, the adversaries of the West like Russia and China, have issued joint statements about how they agree about Agenda 2030 and the need to implement these things, while the West, the EU, the Biden administration all also agree about those things. It's a global agreement that these particular policies need to be implemented at the global level. I think there's a lot of growing awareness that the UN as the global superpower is problematic for a variety of reasons. But the same people that ensured the creation of the US as the superpower in the post-World War II era are also behind the creation of this multipolar world order that is also being, currently created right now. So after World War II, there was the Bretton Woods situation, which helped ensure U.S. financial hegemony around the world. And currently, we have what a lot of these same actors are calling the new Bretton Woods moment.
She calls them actors.
Seized in order to create a new global financial governance system. And they inherently frame that new system as being multipolar in nature.
And so what I personally believe to be the most concerning part of this whole issue is that both the central bank digital currencies and this digital ID that the UN and the WEF and the IMF are all working together on, they're framing it as something that is decentralized, when in reality it is completely centralized, and it gives them complete authoritarian control over your life. And this is something that most people are not even aware is currently happening right now. In fact, 99% of the world population doesn't even know that these organizations exist. They don't even know that these experiments are currently ongoing, and that is why we need to make sure that everybody does see this. So if this video resonated with you, if it taught you something new, please consider subscribing to my channel. I make crypto content and I upload it daily, and I also make tons of interesting videos like this Whitney Webb one here. And please also hit that like button so that this video gets pushed through the YouTube algorithm, and I'll see you guys very soon.
Very interesting, y'all. Very interesting. Let me get a stop. I'll go up this. So I had to share that. I had to share the other video because this is getting real. This is where we are at with them. This is why I'm really driving people to, y'all that are part of this, get in on yourself and do the work on yourself. A lot of stuff that's outside yourself is true, right? But your power is within you, and that aspect of it will support you. It will. There's people here that I have people here that have stories you would not believe of when they went in on themselves and awareness, and how the support, call it God, call it your ancestors, whatever your source, what you're connected to in frequency and vibration. Like I said, call it God, call it your higher self, whatever term you want to use and you feel comfortable with, is it will show up for you. They will show up for you. You have some. But stay connected, because if you go outside yourself, like I said, your power is within you and your superpower can be activated. I'm telling you, you're going to definitely need it. And this awareness needs to be shared. We are a power if we wake up and we say, no, they want to do this and think it's all good. Like it's decentralized. I mean, I knew about the WIF for a long time, and the whiff showed their butts in 2020 and all that COVID stuff. I mean, you know, all the jubby jubby stuff, right? All the cooties stuff. They showed him, and then the leader, Klaus Schwab's, who go into what he is of the whiff, like he's talking World Economic Forum, has said by 2030, you guys will not, there will not be regular cars. Everything will be electric, and you have no choice from what he's saying. When we know all the information is, you know, not facts, 100% not facts. So you guys have a great day. Be aware. Stay in your power. Stay in your power, but know what's going on. Not knowing does not help you. You'll be taken in a situation that will not help you, and you're not unaware, and you'll be caught with your, like I said, with your rear view mirror, not seeing what hit you from on the side when you went to the other lane because your rear view mirror had blind spots. But stay in your power is within you.